Welcome to the Friday Nightcap. Despite the deadline passing for the War Powers Act, Donald Trump says he does not need any congressional approval because the Iran war has been, quote, terminated. Of course, while the actual military attacks have been on pause for weeks, the U.S. naval blockade of Iran remains in full effect, and the blockade is an act of war. The two sides are still in a dramatic standoff over the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's nuclear program, a standoff that has shocked the global oil market and supply chains. Pakistani officials have confirmed to MS Now that they have received an updated proposal from Iran to end the war, but Trump says he is not satisfied with their latest offer. On top of that, today the U.S. withdrew 5,000 troops from Germany, a critical ally. It comes after Germany's chancellor said the U.S. was being humiliated by Iran's leadership in negotiations. I got to take a deep breath. When it comes to the impact of all of this on the American people, today we saw the biggest one-day jump in gas prices since the ceasefire with Iran began. An average gallon is now costing $4.39. That is up 34 cents from 1 week ago. But the president says, don't worry about it. Watch. He'll tell you himself.
When the war ends, gasoline prices are going to tumble because there is so much right now on the seas already loaded into tankers that can't escape the strait. There is so much, like record-setting. But when the war ends, gasoline prices will go down to below what they were.
Brother, please, for fact's sake, that is simply not true. Even after the war ends, it will take months for the global flow of oil to get back to normal. And it looks like Americans are not buying what the president is trying. I'm not going to say selling, what he is trying to sell, because it ain't working. A Washington Post poll shows that the Iran war is already as unpopular as the Vietnam and Iraq wars were during those years-long conflicts. We have a lot to cover, but you are in luck. It is a Friday night, and we have got a stellar nightcap. My dear friend, Ali Vitale, Tulane's #1 favorite alumni, MS Now senior Capitol Hill correspondent, and you know her as host of Way Too Early. Steve Leisman is here. Musician, superstar, dad, friend, brother, and CNBC's senior economics reporter. Jason Johnson, politics and journalism professor at Morgan State University. He is also, lucky you, an MS Now political contributor. And Adam Mockler, making his debut visit to the 11th hour, progressive commentator and Midas Touch journalist. And I warn you before you begin, keep those hands on the table. Jason, this war is already very, very unpopular, and it seems less likely that the Trump administration is going to achieve what their original stated goals were, even their goals in the beginning or the midterm. What is the political endgame? How's Trump going to sell this to us? Because he's not getting out of it tomorrow.
Oh, he can keep pitching. It's just no one's buying, right? Like, this is not a sales job. It's a pitching job. And the problem is, like with any other sort of pitch, if you keep changing the target, right, nobody can really respond. Initially, it was to stop the nuclear weapons, and then it was to change the regime, and then it was to get us gas prices. Look, anybody over the age of 30 knows that going to war to cheapen gas is never going to work, right? Any Gen Xer, any millennial kind of already knows that. But also at a practical level, no one can hear your explanation for the war over the sound of that click, click, click at the gas station as you are spending increasing amounts of money to do basic things. I will say this, talk about this all the time. I spend time in Georgia. I spend time on the East Coast. I spend time in California. I was 45 minutes north of L.A. Gas was $7 a gallon.
$7?
I was livid. You can see the rage. And it's one thing to see that in the city, right? There's a famous picture of like Olympic if you're downtown Los Angeles, but it was $7 a gallon. And that is the kind of thing that people are going to remember. They don't care what's happening over there. They care about the fact that their basic lives are being negatively impacted. And until Trump can figure out how to change that, no one's going to care about the war or the explanation.
The young people you cover, the young people you speak to, what do they say about the war? Because Donald Trump had a lot more enthusiasm from young voters this time around than his first term.
Listen, the war is absolutely ruining the pockets of young people, and you made a great point that they're constantly shifting the objective of this war, but it's more than that. They're lowering the threshold for what victory is considered as. At first, it was regime change, then it was nuclear disarmament. Now they're saying that because we took out their 50 to 60-year-old Navy, this is some sort of victory. Victory in a war is defined as using force to get political concessions from your opponents. We have gotten zero political concessions from Iran. In fact, they won't even show up to the negotiating table. The strait is still closed. We've gotten zero political concessions. To answer your question, it's hurting young people a lot. There's a stat that Americans have collectively spent $22 billion out of their pocket just on gasoline since this war started. That's money that could have been spent on health care, on child care, on a long list of things to reinvest into our economy. But guess what? We're spending it on gas. So when you combine that with the tariffs, with the ACA subsidies slashing, and with the fact that young people can't accumulate capital in the first place, then as young people would say, we're cooked. This war is cooking us right now. Trump has no off-ramp, and it's not good.
But he says these polls that show how unpopular the war are, he said it at an event in Florida today. He says they're fake.
Well, any poll that shows that things are bad for him is fake. That's been true since 2015 when I first started covering him. I think the thing that goes along with the point that both of you are making, people are spending more at the gas pump. I filled up with my dad today, $5.39 out in Westchester County. Things are pricey. And also, this is the time of year where the entire Republican selling point should be at its height. Republicans are saying we passed permanent tax cuts. You're going to be getting a better tax refund. This is the season, folks. And now people are feeling like whether or not the tax refund is as good as Republicans say it is, and it isn't, they are also saying that they're spending more on their basic goods, everything from the grocery store to certainly the gas pump. And I think it comes back around to the idea that, A, I say this on my show a lot, the politics and the foreign policy ride right alongside each other right now, which is making Republicans actually quite nervous because they feel like if you're in it now, you better finish it in a way that it actually sounds like a victory. And B, they're also a bit worried that as this continues to drag on, because gas prices are not just going to immediately go right back to what they were, they're going to have nothing to sell in a midterm election. And that is a really huge problem for them because a generic ballot already looks bad, and it is only getting worse.
You know my question. I did a poor man's fact check. Give us the Steve Leisman version. Trump's argument that the minute this war ends, gas prices are going to plummet. They'll be where they were a year ago.
Well, first of all, I have to remark that I don't know which is more annoying. That I have to sit around and listen to these young people, or that these young people, they're so smart. That's what I don't know.
I mean, as he's speaking,
it's both a little bit annoying in that regard.
Speaks,
I have to make that comment.
All I do is think of myself at 23, and I think, man, you are a superstar.
I bring that up by way of I have a choice. I can listen to Donald Trump's prediction about gas prices, or I can tell you what the head of Exxon said in our air this morning.
Thank you.
And that's kind of an easy tell. And who do I want to listen to? He said it's just starting. What maybe people don't know is we started this war with a lot of oil on the seas. And
what does that mean? What does that
mean? Oil in tankers. I think they knew this was coming. They filled up the oil. They brought it around. We're approaching what the head of Exxon calls the operational minimum. We're still a couple billion barrels above that. When that happens, right now the oil is flowing. People can get the oil they want at a price. Issue becomes what happens when we can't get the oil and you have to start to bid up for it. I actually did a stat. You said 22 billion. Mm-hmm. I did a stat at the beginning of this whole thing predicting that this would be a transference of wealth inside this country of 150 billion for the full year.
Transference from who to who?
You have to ask me that question?
I want you to tell our audience.
It's a transference of wealth from ordinary average Americans to the oil producers and the people who are
Okay, but then this is why I asked.
Let me get, you keep going. You keep going.
How big of a deal is it that the CEO of Exxon, right, who the last thing he wants to do in this world is anger one of one Donald Trump sitting in the Oval Office, and he was willing to tell that truth on your air today? That's the point I want to make.
He has no choice. He has to say, we asked him the question, where are we at? And it's already showing up, but it's not showing up in a big way. When you look at the macro data, it's being overwhelmed by what's happening with artificial intelligence and the investment in this country. In fact, you could do some crude math and come up with the 2% growth we had in the first quarter. 1.5 could have been associated with AI. Now, let's take that out. Okay, you take that out, what are we having? We have incomes have been down 2 months in a row, real incomes adjusted for inflation. Year over year, incomes up just 0.2%, the lowest since November 22. We had decent spending, low income. Steve, how did you get there? I'll tell you, Stephanie, in case you're asking. We got there, but we drew down savings. And savings are at the lowest level since 2022. So what's happening now, people are papering it over. They're using debt. They're using their savings. That can't last very long. If this goes on much longer, there will be much more severe consequences that people will feel in a way they're not feeling it just now.